Here we go then. How long's it been, Robin, since we've done one of these?
There's been a pandemic since the last time, isn't there? No, I'm only joking. No, listen, it's been a while. But that's not because we've been sitting on the beach in the Bahamas or anything like that. That's because we've been up to our eyes in work. And Graham can testify to that because I was busting my arse last week in Shetland doing some training and some free consultancy, as they say, since I was on the island cornered by Graham and Big Colin Nicholson. And Ian certainly has a history with that part of the world as well. So we've got an esteemed guest today, Ian.
Yes, we have. It's been a while since we had a guest, but welcome, Graham, for joining us, and thank you very much.
Yeah, pleasure, guys.
Yeah, so Graham, do you want to tell the viewers sort of where you're working, where you are at, just to kind of give us a bit of an idea?
So we're way up in Shetland, way up north end of Scotland, as high as you can get. I work in one of the leisure centres that's on the island. There's 8 leisure centres in total. So I'm in the North Mainland one, which is kind of up in the North Mainland as such of the islands. And we've been suffering from an algae problem that was kind of brought up with Robin last week while he was up. I've been doing a little bit of digging around into all our figures and all that, so I'm hoping to pass on some figures to you guys and get some answers back to maybe how to solve this problem like as such.
So if anyone doesn't know this as well, and correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, the Shetland Islands are closer to Norway than what they are to mainland Scotland. That's true, isn't it?
Yeah. The boat that gets from Shetland to the mainland of Scotland can be up to 14 hours long, and going into Norway, we can easily get there quicker than what we can to...
See, Robin, that's what you should have done. You should have sailed to Norway and then flown back.
To Norway.
What gets me, Ian, is see when I deliver the training or when I'm over in Shetland, the guys talk about the mainland, right? To me, the mainland is Scotland, right? But see, when they talk about the mainland, they mean the main island, because there's like loads of other islands, and you've got 8 leisure centres for 25,000 people.
Yeah,
is that right?
So that's 5,000 people. Yeah,
it's a phenomenal amount of water per head of population, but that's because somebody managed to discover oil not far off Shetland, and there was a wee bonus check given to the island to build these 8 leisure centres, and it's done well.
Oil's the dirty word just now with the COP26, so just keep it on the down low.
Well, on that note, Shetland is one of the leaders in renewable energy, and there might be another wee bonus check coming the way of Shetland Recreational Trust, because their leisure centres have been, since the oil boom and the wee bonus check, they've not had a lot of money since. So this wee renewable check, hopefully it doesn't bounce, but it could help regenerate the leisure provision in Shetland. So it could be good timing, Graham,
Yeah, it could be coming up well for that. They're starting
to
go. Funds again.
Aye, brilliant.
So the reason why I've asked Graham on today is because, a couple of full reasons. So myself and Robin, we've been doing a lot of dye testing and algae clean. Probably, actually, to be fair, I'd say this year I've done more dye testing and algae cleans than what I've ever done in the past sort of 3 or 4 years, to be honest. They've all seemed to have been getting inquiries in thick and fast for this. And obviously with Graham having his problem, he said, would you like to come and do a podcast? He's agreed. So Graham, do you want to tell us the crux of the problem? What's happening with it? What it's like?
So we seem to have a algae problem in our shallow end of our pool. It's we have a lagoon area which is probably about half a meter, and it slowly goes into up to about a meter worth of water. And the tiles that were put down, it's all mosaic tiles. They're only inch by inch or something like that. The tiles have been down since 1988, so they've been there a while. And over the years, we've been cleaning it and scrubbing it and that sort of thing to try and get rid of algae. And I would imagine what's kind of happened over time is wear and tears come in, and they were always grippy tiles. They were never the shiny tiles as such. And but the glaze that normally kept, the tile together has kind of come off, and the algae is starting to get into it. It doesn't happen around the inlets. It's more when it starts to push out the way into the water. You'll see some photos that Ian's just bringing up that I sent through to him. That's because water sits on our side, Ian. There's a wee bit of algae there, and then when you go into the main part of it, you'll see other pictures there that will show you the full extent of what we're sitting at. We've tried various things over the years, like they used to. A bit of history. We used to have a glass roof. You'll see one of the pictures showing that it's now covered up, and we used to have this big glass roof, and it would obviously be a horrendous thing in the summer. The whole entire pool would just be covered in algae. A while ago, they did put on film to try and stop the UV light coming through. Eventually, that got wear and tear, and it never got replaced. And the algae problem became bad, so much so that we were having to pressure wash the whole entire pool at least once a week, and it would be back within 24 to 36 hours. It was starting to grow again. That's a closed over roof now, so it's used to be a big area that was a glass roof, and all that's in there now is 5 circular windows. Again, pictures are there for you, that are all being covered up with that UV film, so they shouldn't be necessarily causing a problem, but we're still getting this algae problem coming through. At this precise moment, our chlorine is sitting with a free in the pool of 2.2. That's what the test I did earlier today. And the combined is away down at 0.2, so it is working well that way. But whether it's the flow rate, I've got the flow rate sitting here as well, it's 38 meters cubed, and that's at 45 hertz. So it is at kind of the level we think it should be at. It can go up to 50 hertz, but taking in that energy efficiency with, like we were just speaking about COP there. So yeah, that's just to show that the windows are kind of, they are filmed up as such, and there's another 2 at the top that are all filmed up, but they're circular windows. They're kind of small windows compared to what the big roof was, and we were thinking the big roof was the main issue. It obviously isn't. There obviously is more problems going on, but it's got a good grip of these tiles now. I'm sure Ian will bring up the photo eventually of that one, because it's, when you see it, it is like, wow, this is a major problem. And we're kind of at a loose end now of like, where do we go with this to actually bring it out completely?
Picture 1.9, Ian, is an absolute peach. Well, Graham will not think it is, but it's a cracker. See, the mosaic tiles that obviously have had anti-slip on them.
Yeah.
And they've kind of worn down. It's a cracker. And if you can see that, that's grass, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's you could empty that and you could start raising a herd of sheep.
Yeah.
And
you can see there in the picture, like where the non-slip tiles finish.
Yeah.
And the normal tiles kind of come in. That's where the gradient starts to slip away as well.
Aye.
And this is all kind of non-slip tiles where it's getting a good grip into, and we're not being able to clear it. You can see the inlets there a wee bit right at the far end of the lagoon there near the steps. It's not around that area that's the issue. It's coming away from there.
See, the thing is, Ian, these sites have got UV. They've also had dye tests, and the site has passed its dye test. The entire pool was covered within 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's it. Listen, after you and I have done a few dye tests recently, that's pretty good, Graham. Yeah.
Well, Graham, to be honest, I put you in the excellent category after some of the ones that we've seen.
Yeah. I would suggest that there are stronger parts and weaker parts in your pool, and that can be seen from the algae growth. The problem you've got is that when the algae gets in, it's in. Irrespective of whether the sun's shining or not, it's in. So, and then it's having to get rid of it. There's 2 aspects to the algae. anyone can get rid of the algae, but stopping it coming back or slowing it down coming back is a real tough aspect of it. Now, I know your sites, all the sites in Shetland, because they've been given good training over the years, you know, they're all implementing good practice, and the standards are high, you know, and your chlorine level at 2.2, you know, you're satisfying the current
code of practice.
Absolutely, the current code of practice, and you're hitting higher chlorine than, you know, traditionally that you would need to disinfect the pool, and that should help kill the algae. But the problem you've got is that, see, the first aspect is the tiles. Those tiles, to a tiny microscopic plant life, you know, you're talking right down to what 2 microns, Ian, round about that. So you're talking right down to minuscule. You could fit 1,000 wee microscopic algae on a pinhead. So when they're attaching themselves to these tiles look like the Himalayas, you know. So because of all the gradients and how they're rough, because they're non-slip stuff, so they're rough. So they can grab on, they're protected by all that surface area. So because the surface area is so great, they're able to hide in that surface area away from agitated water. So unless you actually attack that area with a deck scrubber or a chemical, they're just going to stay there because they're comfortable. They're easy. It's like, brilliant. We're here for the long haul. We're living here comfortably here. You know, it's no problem. You know, you could put it up to 50 hertz. It's not going to make any difference if you've got full.
The problem is as well, is often a lot of the algae produces a biofilm, doesn't it? So it's almost like a self-protecting armor or skin for it, and that's where the deck scrubbing comes in, because you need to be able to scratch it, so to speak, to let the chlorine penetrate into the actual algae itself to try and kill it. And that's why a lot of the cleans that we do, you need something to sit in it for a while and to be able to attack it, sort of clean it. I mean, those are the first times I've seen those photos, Graham, and it's pretty shocking. But you know, the first thing that springs to mind with me is I don't know about Robin, but I detest mosaic tiles in swimming pools.
Oh man, listen, I've been told to cut down in the swearing on the podcast, but man, that's a fucking joke, man. You know, mosaic tiles kill me.
I mean,
you know?
The reason being is just purely because how they're designed with the string back. I mean, the a pool I was at a couple of weeks ago in Solihull, Robin, the manager had a little pot on the desk for the tiles being handed over when the customers picked them out. And funny enough, they had the dive company coming in the week after to put them back, and there was a big 2 meter sort of square area that was having to get completely lifted and laid with the water being in there. But it's funny when the manager's got a little pot on her desk where she puts all the return tiles.
The problem is that because a lot of time it's so frequent that they come off. You'll get leisure facilities that just buy the epoxy grout, the aqua stick. You can get loads of brands. You can buy them that stuff 10 a penny, and they start to put it down themselves. But over time, it's not been put down properly. The gradient, you know, there's undulations. You start to get, you know, the tiles showing. They're starting to get sharp, and then, you know, especially in spas, you start to see people, you know, getting cuts, and people start because they're sitting on it. So it's just a general, just a nightmare. Looks great when you build it in a 5-star luxury hotel and you've got these fancy mosaic tiles with the light in. You know, they can do great things. You know, you see it at there's a hotel in Edinburgh that it's got all the kind of dark mosaic tiles in the dark light, and it looks phenomenal. So it must be a lifeguard's nightmare because you can't see anything. But it's just not practical.
So, Graham, remind me, how old is the actual facility itself?
So the poolside itself is 1988, November 1988 it opened up. So it's must have been in the rage back then, because I think a lot of our pools have mosaic tiles in them.
There was a job lot going cheap somewhere in Scotland.
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
And when did they first sort of you know the history of the algae problem when it first started to sort of say, right, actually, it's a bit of an issue now?
So I started here in 2008, and it was probably about then as well. Like, you know, it was probably even before then. And
I hope there's no link here.
No, there's no link. No. But that's like when I started noticing it, because I was getting asked to go in and brush wash and scrub. Like, you know,
That's
was
standard, mate. Newbies always get wet.
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
Okay,
yeah, it's been a while. Like, it's been
so
going
12,
on.
13 years now, sort of. You know, it's been a bit of an issue. So, what's the forward plan to overcome this? To the management plan, should we say, of it moving forward, to be able to try and sort of you know, overcome it, control it, manage it, so to speak.
Yeah. So we had our glass roof replaced in 2018, 19,
Okay.
somewhere about there. So I suppose at the end of the day, that's been a big factor to get rid of that sunlight, you know, and that's maybe where we're actually thinking now we can manage this, because before, unless you were going to take that roof away, then, you know, it was just.
Well, Graham, funny you should mention that. So me and Robin did a big pool in South London. Oh, when did we do it? Was it July time, Robin?
Aye.
Maybe July, August time. And it was a big glass box on three sides, and also glass skylights, not glass roof, but big glass skylights.
Yeah.
And we did the algae clean and dye test overnight, and it was quite apparent. We were still there at sort of 6:30 in the morning as the sun was coming up. And you could really see where the sun was hitting it. And it was an interesting one, because it'd actually been okay. And it was only a 2-year-old pool.
Mm-hmm.
But they'd had a massive set of blinds down one side, didn't they, Robin? And they decided to leave it open during the third lockdown because they thought it would look prettier and not use the blinds.
Oh, yeah.
But then that was obviously 3 months of it not being checked for the January to March lockdown. And it just took hold, basically. And the interesting thing, well, the dye test showed us quite a lot in that particular pool. I know you had a good dye test, but this had a horrendous dye test, if I'm being honest. There was issues over the position of the plant, the length of run of pipe work, and it basically had 6 shallow end inlets, 6 deep end inlets. Deep end inlets were fine, no algae there, Robin, was there? And
no, it was fine, aye.
And then the shallow end inlets, if you numbered them, and we'll say it would be, just call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for our argument's sake. 1 and 2, nothing. 3 and 4, loads. 5 and 6, nothing. And it was strange because the pipe work, the way it flowed in, it should have been best in 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all the way down and worst in the 6. And Robin, do you want to talk about what was discovered afterwards?
Aye, well, I actually discussed this with Graham and Colin Nicholson last week, and I drew it on a bit of paper because we did the dye test, and you would, as Ian suggests, you would expect the dye to come out stronger on the inlets that are nearest the pipe coming in, unless, you know, and they didn't have valves that were adjusted to accommodate that, did they? Ian, it wasn't, so it should be stronger. However, when we were taking the video, it was like really, really strange. It was just emanating out the inlets, and then the 2 middle inlets, it was coming out no bother. And we're like,
it was like wisps of smoke coming from a match, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like it was being sieved. Yeah, it was kind of sieved out. So we, you know, obviously I think it took us an hour and a half for that site to get completely covered in terms of the dye. And we had great photos and there was a guy with us throughout the time, so he's seen it with his own eyes. So that was a major part of our findings. And the algae, the parts where the dye was poorest coming out the inlets, the algae was strongest, right? Mm-hmm. So it did explain to us that the agitated water is really, really important. And to cut a long story short, they obviously wanted to find out the problem or the cause of the poor, the water coming through, the poor flow from the inlets. And they did an investigation and they found loads of builders' rubble in the inlets coming into the pool. So that was obstructing the water and creating poor distribution of the water from the inlets. Had we not done the dye test, they would never have known that. Now, that was affecting the whole water treatment process of the pool, not just the growth of algae, but you're talking getting chlorine into other parts of the pool when it's required. So that was...
And heat, getting equal temperature.
Yeah, crazy. Absolutely.
And do you know,
crazy.
and the interesting thing is, Graham, is that, I mean, obviously your pool's a little bit older, 1988. So, but nowadays, a modern built system, we expect that you get handed over a dye test on, usually on an emailed file now or a USB or whatever. But back in the day, it would have obviously been a CD-ROM probably.
Yeah.
And with the last 3 we've done, there's been no evidence of any dye test ever been completed at the facility.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, the last one we just done was a pool built back in the 90s, so I wouldn't have possibly not expected it back then. But funnily enough, they've got a major algae problem as well. And when they saw them for their own eyes, because a couple of guys stayed back with us when we did that, they said, that's exactly where we get the algae, and that makes perfect sense now.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one, but the dye test it speaks volumes for itself as a investigation. So how are you going to manage this and going forward then, Graham? What's the plan? What's the action plan to give some people some hints and clues? And
so another problem that we tend to have is our alkalinity disappears quite quick.
Okay.
We struggle to keep that up, so much so we were putting in about 3 kilograms a night every night, and if you missed a night, it would drop below the magic number of 75. Like we couldn't keep that at 80. At the moment, it is sitting at 80, which is fine. So that, well, as Robin was saying it last week, that's the coagulant working at its best as such. Like, at least it's working. Below that number, it might not necessarily be working right for the system. So that we need to try and keep that up. The reasoning behind that is we only use sodium bisulfate for our acid at the moment. So, and of course, as soon as you put in anything like something that might raise the pH a wee bit, it's going to fight back against it, and it's going to start pumping in loads, and then before you know it, you're back down to your 40 mark or wherever you were before. Like, so we have action plans on that.
I was going to say, I'm guessing, Graham, that bisulfate is pretty handy in your case, just purely because of deliveries and getting chemicals over to the island, and you can get it can be stored for quite some time. Yeah, sometimes you do have a bit of a fight in the bag with it when it goes a bit solid, and you've got to punch it around a little bit. But
yeah,
I'm guessing bisulfate's probably the best as in delivery, I would have thought, possibly. I mean, I don't know.
It is, and
for delivery, that is only. I'm not suggesting it's the best for that particular pool.
I think, this is an issue that is arising up in a lot of Scottish swimming pools. With the Putai Code of Practice moving the pH down, a lot of swimming pools are struggling to maintain pH below 7.2 using carbon dioxide. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that carbon dioxide is the weakest of all the acids, doesn't like agitated water, and it's hell of inexpensive. It's very, very expensive. And on Shetland, it's even more expensive than it is anywhere else because of the transportation, the fact that you've only got one supplier. And so that you chuck all that into the mix.
Not Mitchell Gases Limited, is it, by any chance?
No yet. No yet. I'm working on that one. Yeah. So the carbon dioxide is a real struggle because, listen, they use calcium hypochlorite. Yeah. Marriage made in heaven for soft water.
HDH, definitely.
Calcium hypochlorite with carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide, when you add it to the water, to cut a long story short, without going into the deepest, darkest chemistry of it, it will add to the alkalinity.
Yes.
And we need that in a soft water. So it works brilliant with calcium hypochlorite. And in a lot of cases, you maybe only need to add 2 or 3 kilos of sodium bicarbonate per week, and you manage to achieve that through cleaning scum lines or cleaning deck level channels or poolside, stuff like that. So it's never been an issue in Scotland, but now the pH has come right down. The carbon dioxide's gone through the roof in terms of price. We're having to look at alternatives. Now, the problem that you've got is that sodium bisulfate reduces alkalinity. whereas carbon dioxide raises the alkalinity. So then what you're now in a situation.
It is a bit devil's advocate, isn't it? Because even if, it's way too strong, but even if Graham went for hydrochloric or sulfuric, it will reduce the alkalinity. So it's a bit of a Sophie's choice.
We've had a look at it. I think he's maybe adding bisulfate a wee bit stronger than he needs to.
Okay.
So I think the size of the pool's not big. So the volume of water's not massive. So if you were to slightly overdose the sodium bisulfate, you're going to rip out your alkalinity quite quickly. And
some figures on that sort of thing, like our bisulfate is at 16% concentrate at the moment.
Okay.
That's what was measured this morning. And like our pool volume size is 162 meters cubed. So it's not a massive pool, it's not a major pool. But
so we thought about going down to 10%, Ian, to try that.
When I worked up in Cumbria in the Lake District, we used to work off the 9% ratio.
Yeah. So I've suggested 10, just for a nice easy round number, and so we'll try that. I think we're going to have to try a lot of little things, and there's a lot of process of elimination. The alkalinity is crucial because you need to get the coagulant working, and they're using Dynafloc as well, Ian. So it's good. It's a really good coagulant, and the good thing about the Dynafloc is that from a strength perspective, unlike PAC, it's a form of PAC, but unlike the pre-prepared polyaluminium chloride that you get, it's not, when it's in storage, because it's a dry product, it's not reducing in strength. So the coagulant that they've got is good quality that's getting dosed in. But for it to work properly, it needs to be above that 75 milligrams per litre for the alkalinity. Otherwise, you're not taking out the phosphates, which would be food for the algae and other bacteria, and removing other minute particles. Their TDS is through the roof because of the sodium bisulfate fighting against the alkalinity. One of the biggest things happens in every single pool plant operator's course that I deliver, especially in Scotland or the north of England, is the detail in how you dose in your sodium bicarbonate.
Yes.
If you throw it directly into the swimming pool, into that warm water, or dissolve it in hot water, straight into the pool, not isolating the probes on the controller, not mixing it properly, you are asking for trouble, especially when you use sodium bisulfate, because the bisulfate will just go in and attack that. You'll be raising the pH because you'll be converting the bicarb into carbonate, and it's just a vicious circle. It's so crucial. We've even thought, Ian, about raking it right up to 150, and dissolving bicarb in the cold water, preparing a good solution, isolating the probes, ramping it up to 150 to see how we get on, to see if it can sustain it for a period of time, to see how it's a bit of an experiment.
It's a trial and error.
Yeah, to see if we can keep it ticking over. And then it's just a case of, if once, it might drop a wee bit each week, but if they can add in 1 or 2 kilos, then that might just keep it up. But then what you're not doing is, you're not letting it's almost having a one hit and then not letting the bisulfate know that you're adding in a load of bicarbonate each day following that. So it's a bit of an experiment. I'd love to hear how Graham gets on with that experiment, see how that works.
No, that'd be good.
So this is something that's happening all over the place, Ian. And the good thing is that Graham knows his shit. He knows what he's doing, and the SRT up in Shetland, they're half decent at what they do,
Very good trust.
Yeah. They don't have a lot else to do, There's either they go to the pub or they work in their swimming pools,
Because last time I was there, I was actually there for, I think it was last time or the time before, when they burned that Viking ship.
Oh, yeah.
Up Hellier.
Yeah, so I was, they got to show me the ship they were going to burn, and I just couldn't get it. I was like, what are you doing?
I was doing a 3-day course in July this year, and one of the guys that was on that course is what's called the Yarrow.
Yeah, the Yarrow.
He's the Yarrow. He's the upcoming Yarrow. Big tall guy, thin beard.
Neil Moncrief.
Neil, that's the guy.
That's
Big Scotland supporter. He goes to all the games, or he used to. He's the Yarrow coming up. And Robert, who popped his head round the corner earlier on, he's the Yarrow the following year. So they're the guys that, I don't know what the Yarrow does, but he gets pissed and absolutely out in the sauce probably for a couple of weeks during the up earlier. But
like years more like, not just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes on involved in there, creating. Yeah. Are you part of one of the teams, Graham?
No, I keep my head clear of it all, at the moment.
I think, Ian, we need to head up there for up earlier, because
my kidney wouldn't survive a night.
Because they use all the leisure facility. Well, they use Clickham as a place where they party, and is it a 2-day public holiday on the island?
Yeah, certainly one. Yeah, certainly one, if not coming into the second day. A lot of people take off that week, absolutely.
Brilliant.
So, Graham, other than thinking about the alkalinity, what else is there? Anything else you've done to try and help combat the problem?
Not at this precise moment as such.
Because it is a bit of trial and error, to be fair, isn't it? It's
we with Robin being up in that summer, he was up doing that 3-day course. He did pop his head in, and we had a bit of discussion on site of how we might go forward. And one of the things that was suggested then was to buy the HDH granular.
Yeah.
Because all we use is briquettes, or we've got the shock. So we've bought that middle ground one. And what we're needing kind of from that is like a procedure of what we're meant to do with that and how to lay it on. Is it, use a pipe as such to get it down to where the algae is? How long do we leave it there before we scrub it off and that sort of thing? So maybe catch you guys for that at some point soon. We close over the Christmas period for 10 days. For essentially what we do is we take all our public holidays in one go. So the leisure centre is actually in Shetland near enough shut. They're starting to look at programs for maybe potentially opening up 1 or 2, but we will be shut this year, and I plan on doing a lot then. I mean, as Robin was saying, our TDS is through the roof. It's 3,650 at this morning, that's PPT. So that's high. So we need to get that down. Our source water only sits at 130, so we need to get that right down.
That's nice water.
Yeah.
Aye. The source water is, aye.
I'm down south now, just outside London, and tell you what, my source water, Jesus, you don't want to drink it. I've actually got carbon filtration in my house. It's that bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so we seem to be getting nice water and adding too much to it, so we're needing to sort out our water. But again, as Robin was saying, going back a wee bit in the history of the algae, we used to have CO2 in here as well. And when they started looking at, the cost in the island is like £100 per cylinder, and some pools are going through a cylinder a week, if not 2 cylinders a week. So you're looking at £200 odd a week. So yeah, you're right. The bisulfate is an alternative that's quite cheaper. We're the only leisure centre in Shetland that just runs purely on bisulfate, because the way it worked out, the team at the time that was putting in said, do this. So it is now getting discussed that we bring back CO2 and have a blend between both of them.
Yeah.
Because the CO2 will help kill off the algae as well as, the bisulfate will hopefully keep the prices down,
Trickle it up, and hopefully it'll keep the alkalinity up a little bit, and then every once in a while it needs a boost. Just use the bisulfate. And to be fair, me and Robin Robin mainly, I pushed it on to him, did a lot of work with Leeds City Council in the summer, I think it was, Robin, if I can remember rightly.
Yeah.
And they had a very similar issue, but they were issued a warning from their supplier saying CO2 will not be supplied for, I think it was 8 weeks, but it turned out to be more like 20, I think. Because it had been taken priority with the NHS, as a lot of gases had done. So we did quite a lot of work with sites that were using bisulfate for the first time, but different to you, Graham, they were having a hand dose because it wasn't worthwhile getting day tanks and, for a short period of time. So they were hand dosing in, and and even still, there was a large commercial pool that me and Robin were at in Yorkshire 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Open from, I think it was it 1975? I think.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, 76, I think.
something like that, 75, 76, and they were hand dosing since day dot and still are.
Wow.
And it's a large 25-meter facility in Yorkshire. Yeah, so it was a bit of a, we were like, whoa, he's
Yeah.
still hand dosing in.
Aye, and the rest, you know, it was quite scary, quite scary. I think one of the things that Graham needs to establish is the food for the algae, the phosphate levels, and that's a tricky one because I did a wee bit of research and work on phosphate levels, and the phosphates can vary in the mains water, so it makes it difficult to try and measure what you've got. I mean, you can measure in the pool, but when I was doing the phosphate testing, the mains water was quite high, but then the pool water was quite low. So I was kind of I was a wee bit flummoxed as to, oh well, there's not that much phosphates in the water, so that shouldn't be causing the algae growth. But then I went back to a marine biologist, and the marine biologist says, of course that's going to be the case, Robin, you doughball, because the algae's eating the phosphates in the pool. And that's why you're going to have higher phosphates in the mains water. Well, so you've actually proved your point, you know, and I'm like, oh, shit. Yeah, that makes sense. So that's what we need to try and establish. Now,
we've had back the phosphate tests on, I don't know if you saw them, Robin, on the South London pool.
Aye.
They finally came back, and there's a huge difference between what we simply call high and low phosphate tests, which is basically test the mains, but it's important that it's the mains that's going into the pool, because in case some sites are on boreholes or anything like that. And then the phosphate levels actually in the water as well. But there's a huge difference in that South London pool.
And that's the food for the bacteria and the algae, and that's a difficult one. What it does do is it helps you paint a picture, you know, and then you can tackle that and you can use that as part of your strategy. Now, what that would highlight is the real importance of making sure the coagulant's working correctly, you know, and that's crucial for removing the phosphates. Apart from that, I mean, I have seen no-phos, Ian, being used in some swimming pools.
I used it in a pool in Oxfordshire back in 2015. But the problem is it's only a temporary fix, and the levels will eventually tick back up. The more you've done backwashing, water dumping, just refilling, evaporation, and after 2-3 months, the levels are back to where they are unless you continually use no-phos.
I mean, I think I have seen no-phos being used in some pools by hand, and it created a film on the bottom of the pool, which protected the algae. You know, it stopped the algae from actually being tackled by the agitated water and stuff like that. I think the use of a coagulant with a phosphate remover in it, I always like that idea because it's controlled, it's dosed in continuously, and it's easy. That's always something that you could entertain if it's needed, you know, as a part of the process and the process of elimination. But yeah, the phosphates, people don't realise that phosphates are used in mains water, and it's all done properly. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's not anything that's out of the ordinary or untoward. No. The Drinking Water Directive, you know, have very clear parameters on what Scottish Water and other utilities need to use and what levels to put it in at. So it's all there for anyone to have a look at, you know, and if there's anything that's out of the ordinary, I can assure you Scottish Water would have to tell you. So yeah. So it's something to look at. But the problem is trying to get a laboratory that will do the test.
Yeah. Which is the difficulty I had.
Yeah. It's not easy, you know. It's Scottish Water, that's something you need to look into, but I know I've asked them in the past and they've struggled to get phosphate testing done. But that's maybe something that I need to look into. And Ian probably needs to look into geographically around the country to help our clients when these problems arise.
No, definitely.
Yeah. But thanks for sharing those pictures, Graham. You know, so
no, brilliant, Graham. Sort of, hopefully, people might have a better understanding of what they're up against. But it's almost an ongoing battle. It'd be fair to say that in some cases, if it gets a hold, it's like the Japanese knotweed of swimming pools.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare, and you might spend years tackling the thing before you've fully eradicate it.
Yeah,
I think that'd be a fair comment.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for coming on, Graham. Much appreciated you travelling the distance from Shetland to come on our podcast.
So that's us for another week. We don't know when we'll be back, me and Robin, because our work is just absolutely horrendously busy, but we'll put this episode up, and hopefully if we are not back before then, I hope everyone has a nice Christmas and New Year. Don't celebrate too much, Robin.
Take it easy, Ian. Take it easy. Thanks again, Graham. Listen, I'll see you in Shetland in the not too distant future.
Yeah. You'll be up soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Up earlier.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Cheers, guys.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Graham.